When Babur died in 1530, he left his son Humayun a throne made of glass. The empire was still young, fragile, and surrounded by enemies who longed to see it shattered. Humayun was a man of gentle temperament, more a dreamer than a hardened warrior like his father. But in the ruthless arena of Indian politics, dreams could be dangerous. In the early years of his reign, Humayun faced enemies on all sides. Afghan warlords challenged his authority. Rajput kings tested his resolve. And among the most dangerous of his rivals rose a brilliant Afghan general, Sher Shah Suri. Sher Shah was everything Humayun was not: disciplined, strategic, and relentless. In a series of battles, Sher Shah crushed the Mughal forces. Humayun fled his capital, a king without a kingdom. Exile followed. For nearly 15 years, Humayun wandered as a refugee, drifting across hostile lands until he found refuge in Persia. There, under the protection of the Safavid Shah, he absorbed the refinement of Persian art, literature, and administration. This experience would leave a deep mark on Mughal culture. But exile was not without pain. His dignity wounded, his authority mocked. Humayun clung to the hope that one day he would return. That chance came in 1555. With Persian aid, Humayun marched back into India and reclaimed Delhi. The Mughal banner once again fluttered over the city, yet fate proved cruel. Only months after his restoration, Humayun slipped while descending the stairs of his library, struck his head, and died. He had regained the empire only to lose it again, not to an enemy, but to destiny itself. At his death, the Mughal throne passed to his 13-year-old son, Akbar. The empire, fragile once more, seemed doomed to collapse. But this boy, barely in his teens, would grow into one of the greatest rulers the world has ever known. Akbar's early years were marked by danger. In 1556, the Mughal army faced a powerful challenger, Humayun, a brilliant Hindu general who sought to drive the Mughals out once and for all. The clash came at the plains of Panipat, the same battlefield where Babur had triumphed decades earlier. The battle raged fiercely until an arrow struck Humayun in the eye. Leaderless, his army crumbled, and the Mughals once again secured their hold over northern India. The Second Battle of Panipat not only saved Akbar's throne, it saved the Mughal dynasty itself. As Akbar grew, so too did his vision. He was not content to merely inherit his father's fragile empire. He sought to build something lasting, something greater than what any conqueror before him had achieved. Through relentless campaigns, he expanded his dominion over Gujarat, Bengal, Rajputana, and the Deccan. Yet he knew that the sword alone could not hold India together. He needed loyalty, not fear. Akbar's genius lay in his ability to blend force with diplomacy. He defeated Rajput kings in battle, but treated them with honor. Many joined his court, bound to him through alliances and marriages. His empire became not a patchwork of conquered states, but a unified realm bound by loyalty to a just sovereign. Beyond conquest, Akbar was a reformer. He built a system of administration that placed merit above birth, loyalty above lineage. His Mansabdari system ranked officials and organized his vast army with efficiency. He reformed land revenue, easing the burdens on peasants while securing steady income for the state. Under his guidance, the empire became not just a military machine, but a structured, functioning state. But perhaps Akbar's most remarkable achievement was his vision of unity. In a land divided by faith, he saw beyond religion. He abolished the hated tax on non-Muslims, welcomed scholars of every faith to his court, and championed a policy of sulh-i-kul, universal peace. He even experimented with dini-ilahi, a spiritual path that sought to unite the wisdom of many religions. Few followed it, yet its symbolism was powerful. In Akbar's India, tolerance was not weakness, but strength. Akbar was also a patron of art and culture. He built Fatehpur Sikri, a city of red sandstone that rose from the earth like a dream. His court became home to poets, painters, and musicians, producing masterpieces of Mughal art and literature. In his reign, the Mughal Empire was not just powerful, it was magnificent. When Akbar died in 1605, he left behind a realm that stretched across much of the subcontinent. His son Jahangir inherited not a fragile kingdom, but a mighty empire. Jahangir was a man of refinement, a lover of beauty, a patron of artists and poets. His court glittered with paintings, gardens, and music. But he was also a man of weakness, given to wine, opium, and pleasure. Power in his court often rested not in his hands, but in those around him, none more so than his wife, Nur Jahan. Intelligent and ambitious, Nur Jahan became the real force behind the throne, issuing orders, granting titles, and shaping policy. For a time, she was the most powerful woman in the Mughal world. Under Jahangir, the empire held steady, but cracks began to appear. The arrival of the British East India Company marked the beginning of a new chapter, one that would ultimately reshape India's destiny. In 1628, Jahangir's son, Shah Jahan, ascended the throne. His reign would become synonymous with beauty, for Shah Jahan was the great architect of the Mughals. Under his rule, the empire reached new heights of splendor. The most enduring symbol of Shah Jahan's reign is, of course, the Taj Mahal, a monument of love built in memory of his beloved wife, Mumtaz Mahal. Rising in white marble, glowing in moonlight, it became one of the wonders of the world. Yet the Taj was only part of his legacy. He built the Red Fort of Delhi, the Jama Masjid, and palaces and gardens that blended Persian elegance with Indian tradition. Shah Jahan's reign was not only about beauty. He expanded the empire further south into the Deccan and consolidated Mughal authority. The empire under him was rich, powerful, and admired across the world. European travelers marveled at its wealth, calling India the jewel of the world. Yet even in this golden age, shadows gathered. Shah Jahan's later years were marked by illness and by bitter struggles among his sons. When he fell sick, his four sons turned against each other in a brutal war of succession. Out of this fratricidal conflict emerged Aurangzeb, the most controversial of the Mughal emperors. Aurangzeb was a man of iron will, disciplined and devout. Unlike his predecessors, he shunned art and pleasure, devoting himself to piety and war. He expanded the empire to its greatest territorial extent, conquering almost all of India, but his conquests came at a terrible cost. Endless wars drained the treasury, exhausted the army, and bled the empire dry. Aurangzeb also abandoned the policy of tolerance that had defined Akbar's reign. He reimposed the jizya tax on non-Muslims, destroyed some temples, and ruled with rigid orthodoxy. While some admired his devotion, many saw him as a ruler out of step with the diverse land he governed. Rebellions erupted by the Marathas in the Deccan, the Sikhs in Punjab, the Jats in the north. The once mighty empire was strained by resistance from within. When Aurangzeb died in 1707, the Mughal Empire stretched wider than ever before, but it was hollow, exhausted, and unstable. His successors lacked his will and strength. They became puppets of ambitious nobles, their authority shrinking with each decade. As the 18th century unfolded, the Mughal Empire began to unravel. The Marathas rose as a powerful force, carving away territory. The Persians under Nadir Shah invaded Delhi in 1739, looting its treasury, including the Mughal throne. The once glorious empire was humiliated. By the mid-18th century, the British East India Company had grown from a trading enterprise into a military power. At Plassey in 1757 and Buxar in 1764, they defeated Mughal allies and established dominance in Bengal. The Mughal Empire was reduced to a figure, a shadow of his forefathers. By the 19th century, the empire existed only in name. The last Mughal, Bahadur Shah Zafar, lived more as a poet than as a ruler, presiding over a court of fading grandeur. In 1857, when Indian soldiers rose in rebellion against British rule, they declared Bahadur Shah Zafar their emperor. For a brief moment, the Mughal name stirred hope once more, but the rebellion was crushed. The British exiled Zafar to Rangoon, where he died in obscurity. With him ended not just a dynasty, but an era. For more than 3 centuries, the Mughals had shaped the destiny of India. They left behind forts and palaces, gardens and mosques, poetry and painting, a fusion of cultures that still defines the subcontinent. Their story was one of conquest and creation, glory and decay.